How has everyone been? We are back for another cube report. This time we've drafted 2 cubes over the last month. My good cube is currently in the process of being sorted and updated with both Lord of the Rings and MH3 materials, and I'll probably have a video where I sort and make adjustments to that at some point when I have a little more time. But the 2 cubes we drafted this week, in spirit of MH3, we drafted Battle for Zendikar cube, and we drafted Kaladesh cube to hit off the themes of eldrazi and energy. And Battle for Eldrazi is the older set, and so even though we drafted that one actually second, I'll go over that one first. I played, and I died in the final, so I'll just gloss through my deck real quick. I pick one, pack one, had a Crush of Tentacles, which has Surge, bounces everything like a Cyclonic Rift, and makes an 8/8 Octopus token. Pretty cool card, and so when we go over, I've got a lot of cheap spells, and part of that's to get this Surge payoff. And the third game of the finals, I would have won on a really good Crush of Tentacles play, except I got Warping Wailed, and it was just a super bad blowout. And then they hardcast Ulamog, and I super died. And anyway, I drafted a blue-white control, which is good at beating like the allies and aggro piles. We got 0/6. We got a 1/4 with vigilance. We got a lot of gloss. The unfortunate part of sleeved cards. We've got this little wall, makes a land creature. Got a little bit of a land creature theme here. And it's also pretty good. It's a 0/6 that comes with the 3/3. It's actually a lot of power for 3 mana. It's just hard to utilize in any deck that's going to actually be good. So it's pretty much only good in limited. We got this card returns an Awaken spell, which is like the mechanic to turn your lands into creatures, which is cool. It also gives the land creatures flying, which never came up, but it did return some spells sometimes. Good card. We got Reflector Mage. Nice, tempo, drag the game out long. And while I was good at dragging the game out long, I wasn't good at dragging out the game long when their stuff was even bigger and slower than my stuff. We got this 3/4 flying. When it dies, turns one of your lands into a 3/3, or add 3 counters to an already existing man land, because that can be pretty good too sometimes. And then really just a good blocker because they can't remove it, but can also turn the game around if you manage to kill all their stuff and then they're just sitting on removal they can't use. Hexproof's really nice and limited. Hexproof's nice all the time. This guy's normally like too expensive, but in a more draft style format where things can be a little bit slower sometimes, and he still felt too slow to play sometimes, but sometimes he was really nice. Then we got, here's our instant. We got quite a few instants actually. So these cheaper ones are combat tricks sorta, and they buy time, but they're mostly just to get a bit of a surge payoff, and they're just early game smoothers because I'm a slow deck. This counter spell is super key, even though it's just basically a cancel. It did come in handy where Reflector Mage says they can't play it the next turn, so I was able to bounce someone's Limvala, and then a whole turn goes by, and then I'm ready to counter it when it's ready to get replayed, and that definitely won me a game. I pretty much never surge this card, and on the turns I could surge it, it's like, wait, well, I could just hard cast it too. The cost reduction didn't matter. But I am a control deck, so anything that just kind of tries to get you up cards is where you want to be, as long as you don't play too many of them. And then this can ramp just one little piece of mana, which isn't terrible, but tapping 2 creatures and frosting them down is a pretty good way to drag the game out. We'll go over our sorceries here. We've got a Rush of Ice. This card's got a lot of nice utility because it can make a 3/3 at a later cost, but it also costs 1 mana, and then I can surge something. and it can just buy time, and buying time can be big. This one can make a 4/4 land. It also can gain life. It's pretty cool. All my cards are kind of geared at trying to make the game go a little longer. Here's my big payoff draw spell. Sometimes there was no scrying, you're just drawing cards. But I had quite a few times where I got to scry at least 3, and this card felt pretty solid, honestly. And one time I did scry 7, which was cool, but a little bit win more at that point. Our best awaken spell, and probably the best spell in our deck, destroy all non-land creatures. And what's really great about this, not only can we make non-land creatures, and I did awaken this spell probably multiple times, but almost the rest of our deck is just tapping their guys or putting walls out or making them extend the board even wider. So I was almost always just getting a blowout play on this card where they got to put like 6 guys down, and then I kill everything. Because they're like trying to close the game before I, play a game-ending spell like this or the Crush of Tentacles, and they just can't get that kind of chip damage in through my walls and stuff if they don't extend wide. And then we got the Crush of Tentacles, so bounce all the stuff, make an octopus. We got a couple other spells here. We got Pathway Arrows. This can kind of just turn one of your little do-nothing creatures into a tapping creature on colorless guys, but it can also kill X1s. And what's cool is if there was a really problematic 2 or 3 toughness creature, you can equip it to a creature, have it tap to do the damage, and then pay mana and equip it to another creature, get a second damage. So you can actually get a lot of pretty decent removal out of this little equipment. And then we got a Retreat to Coral Helm. Now, being this big dumb control deck where I want to hit all my land drops, I played 19 lands in my 40 card deck. And that's just the way it goes. And this was pretty good, being able to scry or being able to attack with the flyer and then untap it. Just put little bits of pressure like that in was good too. Then we've got Iona's Blessing. It's pretty good. Like a lot of my little creatures are 3 drops. So to curve into this where now I've got the biggest guy and I can push a little bit of pressure and it makes their combat in on me hard. I only drew this card and was able to play it like one time, but it was fine. And then I got our 19 lands. We got 1 dual land. Not a very good one, but fixing helps. And then we've got Blighted Cataract, just a land that can draw cards. This is my only colorless source I played in my deck. And then I played a Mirror Pool, which enters tapped and probably wasn't worth it. And I never did the ability. But the idea is, if I kind of drew both these lands, I could set it up where I get value out of this Mirror Pool. And it just ended up in my draftables because it was a pickable card when nothing else was in my colors. And so I tried it. Didn't matter. Didn't accomplish anything. But and that was my deck. Now for the winning deck, we've got a green-black Eldrazi pile. It's a little early game creature. He's not too special, but he turned into a 5/5 one game versus me. And I think most what these early creatures are great at is when he's playing against another early aggressive deck, they're helping him buy time so he can get his late game payoffs. Again, here's the little guy that dies and then makes a guy that generates mana, so that's pretty good. And then it also generates a colorless mana, which can be relevant for casting some of your spells. So in my Battle for Zendikar draft, because there are 2 artworks for wastes, everyone just gets 2 wastes at the start of their draft, and then they don't get any other wastes rolling around in the pack. So you gotta, if you're gonna pick cards that use the colorless mechanic, you gotta prioritize your lands that can help you get there. So, or just other sources. Here's a mana creature that's pretty bad by most metrics. It's kind of interesting that add any color still doesn't help you add the colorless. But going from 3 to 5 is still good. Here's an early creature that is also kind of resilient, can buy some time. We've got our 3 sort of 4 mana flash block. It's just a decent medium creature. We got Matter Reshaper. It's also just kind of a decent mid-range creature. We've got an Eyeless Watcher. This one's was really solid because it makes 2 little guys that add mana, and he's got some big payoff cards where if he can get a handful of extra guys that just make mana sitting on the table, that'd be a big payoff for him. Here's a 0/4 wall for 4. Card's not great, but it also has a little bit of reach, and yeah, I don't know. It's okay. I never saw it do anything, but it's a card that fits. This guy's pretty cool. It's a 3/4 with reach, and then these flyers can be relevant too, because you know that could be a matchup you could lose to. Someone's playing a lot of cheap flyers, so and then this guy's got reach, same kind of thing. Good way to be defensive. Now we start getting into the bigger stuff, and this card was really backbreaking for me. It's Conduit of Ruin, lets you search for an even bigger creature, and then it also reduces the first creature spell he plays in the next turn by 2. So it takes his 10-drop, he's got an Ulamog here, which was super brutal, and turns it into an 8 mana card. Suddenly it becomes way more castable, and he gets the tutor for it. And then when he doesn't have Ulamog, he also has Kozilek. But in my games, he just had Ulamog, and Ulamog was plenty good. But it is kind of nice that he has all this build up into a late game, and he doesn't, not only one payoff where someone might exile it and still get on with their game. And we've got a super good mid-range Planeswalker here, an Ob Nixilis. Draws cards, can remove things. It's a pretty game-locking emblem. Pretty strong in this limited. Then we'll go through some of our non-creature spells. We got a Othanissa. This card's cool. Nice little smoother. And the fixing for Planeswalkers doesn't really matter, but it's basically just a green preordained type variant. We got Seer's Lantern. It's one of our other ways to hit colorless mana, and then it can also scry, and it's a little bit of ramp, even though it's kind of bad at each of the things it's doing. It's doing a little bit of all of it, so it's pretty handy. We got a Warping Whale, a little bit of interaction, can make a flash blocker, or it can even counter a sorcery spell, which I didn't see coming. Super crushed me. Good card. And then we got Natural Connection, can search for a basic land, which is a way to tutor for a waste. So even though it's 3 mana, just the fixing that this provides is really solid. Here's a pretty bad Disfigure, but limited, you get what you get, and there's still plenty of things that are 2 toughness creatures that you want to kill, and these kind of combat spells are pretty good because you can turn a 4/4 into like a 1/2 and then block it with a 2/2 or whatever. They can help you kill bigger things, so not a bad card. Well, it's a bad card, but it's doing what we need it to do. We've got Sylvan Scrying, another way to just kind of fix the lands and search for lands. We got Seek the Wilds. So this is even more kind of just card selection, which is probably why his deck just kind of gelled and was good at doing the things it did, and why he won all his games. Well, he won all his matches. And then got a Flying Tendrils. As we saw, his early game is not super stacked with stuff to do. This can be pretty impressive, especially if somebody's trying to make a bunch of ally tokens or something, or plant tokens, or you name it. It's just a nice sweeper variant. And then he's got another one with Awaken, so he's got the redundancy to deal with the faster earlier decks. And then that's 23, and then we got 17 lands, and so 17 might not seem like a lot with those 10 drops in the deck, but he's got a lot of ways to find those mana sources, and he's got ways to select cards. So we had a Hissing Quagmire, we got a couple wastes, and then he's got 14 other basics. And then that was that, and we'll get on to the Kaladesh draft, which I also died in the final, so I'll go over my deck. I thought my deck was pretty good, but I was 3 colors, which is a bit greedy, and I just kind of choked on stuff places you don't want to. You get punished for having kind of a trip on your draw, and that's how it goes. My deck super felt like a standard deck. I don't know if people remember playing Kaladesh in standard, but we got Servant of the Conduit and Long Tusk Cub. These were both super good staples at the time. And my deck had a lot of really good 2-drops. Fretwork Colony, which it's kind of neat because you lose a life and it gets a counter every turn. I have a bit of a counters theme because as you see these green and black cards, another standard all-star of the time, Winding Constrictor. Both pumps your counters and your energy, and we're doing both those things. So, I mean, it's not a 2-mana doubling season, but it is doing a lot in this deck for 2 mana. And yeah, it's 4 really good 2-drops in this deck. And we got Architect of the Untamed. This card was really good because you can make energy from a lot of things, and if you just seeing your hand and what you could spend things on, knowing what your best payoff's going to be. Here's a nice little 2/3 that can turn into a 3/4. It's like just exactly kind of where you want to be for draft. I didn't have a lot of good ways to trigger Revolt, but I didn't have 0 ways. And then there's always like just combat trades and stuff. This is pretty solid Kavu variant, being a 3-power 3-drop that can kill a 3 toughness creature. And then, let's see, we got a Lawless Broker, just kind of another 3/2 for 3, just a semi-aggressive creature. Puts a counter on something when it dies, plays into the Constrictor plan. When this guy enters or dies, it proliferates basically a counter on one thing, be it a permanent or player. Also a 3/3 trample, and it's only 3 mana, and it enters or dies. Just a nice, decent 3-drop for a limited situation. In our last 3-drop, we got an Imperial Voyager. Deals combat damage to a player. You get that many energy counters. Never hit the payoff on this guy. They always seem to have an answer for him. But and he's also got trample, but it's not tons of ways to pump him in my deck. Kind of cool. As we notice, the rest of our deck, this is one of our few blue cards. And I never had the problem of drawing the blue, but I did have problems where I'd draw the blue and then I either wouldn't hit double green or double black. And, you try and play 3 colors to get some stronger cards in your deck, and then sometimes you suffer the consequences. And then we got our last creature, a Bristling Hydra, also a standard all-star. Being able to just sit on bunches of counters where you can make sure he has hexproof, and if you got a lot of counters, also the threat to like outgrow their creatures. The energy that can turn into counters between like this and Long Tusk Cub can make combats really difficult for people. And then here's a couple of our Revolt trigger things. Makes a counter, draws a card, kind of cantrips, and just looks for a land, which is fixing. So both these artifacts are great. We got another 1-mana artifact. Whenever counters are put on creatures, you can make servos, and then for 3 mana, you can add a counter to a permanent of a player. Card's really solid. We got a Deadlock Trap. Doesn't make a lot of energy, but the cost is only 1, and so your other things that make energy, you get a lot of mileage out of this card. It does enter tapped, which is a little sad, but once it's going, this is a super solid Icy Manipulator effect. It's pretty efficient by most standards, especially if the energy's not something you're going to miss and something that you have an easy time making. And we'll get into some of our spells. We got a little bit it's artifact heavy set, so we'll put a Shatter variant straight in the deck. -1/-1, and can add a counter on a creature. Just kind of plays into the counter theme. Does a good job. Decent little combat trick. Put a counter on a creature, and then put a counter on each creature with a counter on it. Pretty good in my deck. Could get a lot of mileage out of it. And I still don't know. It didn't really come up because I was winning anyway. But it seems like this goes really far on Winding Constrictor because it's going to put 2 counters on a creature, and then it's going to put 2 counters on each creature with a counter on it. So cool card. And it's also an instant, so this can be a pretty brutal combat trick, even though it is a little bit more mana. And then one of the key things when you have instants, especially the expensive ones, it's good to have more than one instant so that you can leave a lot of mana up and it's not obvious what thing you might be projecting. So we got a Glimmer here. It's a nice card draw, smoother card. A little clunky, but certainly solid. And we got one more instant. We got a Tidy Conclusion. I didn't get very much good efficient removal that was cheap. You know, somebody else got the push, and there's other kill spells too. But I did get this one, so I was kind of forced into playing it because you do want some removal in this format. And yeah, 5 mana to kill a creature is not good, but sometimes you do what you gotta do. You play what you gotta play. We got a Prey Upon. This is kind of a nice spot because a lot of times my creatures would outclass their creatures. And then we've got a Confiscation Coup, which is this was actually my pick one, pack one. And the blue cards just weren't happening. And then towards the end of the draft, I was like, well, can I swing this blue card play? And I felt like I could. And this card was good. So every time I played it, it felt great. Stealing Creatures is good and limited. We got a Rishkar's Expertise. So I draw some cards and then potentially cast another spell for free. Kind of doing double duty in my deck because if I missed blue, this could help me play some of those blue cards as well. But it's also just it's expensive, but it's a good draw spell. And it's mostly a creature heavy deck and creatures that also like to build power. So I only drew and cast this one time, but it was as good as you'd expect it to be. Then we got a Botanical Sanctum, and then we got, I think, seven, yeah, and 2 islands, which doesn't seem like a lot of islands, but we got the energy guy that makes mana. We got the map that can look for the island, and we've only got 2 blue cards in our deck, and it turned out it was enough. One time I cast Confiscation Coup with help of this guy. And the other time I just had 2 blue lands in play. So that's that. But I lost to, and like I said, I mostly just tripped on my curve and stuff. And that's just a price you pay sometimes. I lost to this red-white aggro deck that's got a fun splash in it. So we got an Inventor Apprentice, kind of a nice early play. He actually doesn't have a lot of 1 or 2 drops. And then he's got this Thriving Grubs. Which I think is mostly just the 3/2. But sometimes the energy is used to bank other stuff up. We got a Pummeler. It's probably his best energy payoff in the deck. Really this guy's gets better when you can pay his ability twice and then also play some sort of pump spell, and then he can get kind of dangerous. Got a Weldfast Monitor, just a 3/2, can make menace. It's also an artifact, might be relevant for some stuff. We got a Lathmu Helion, enters with enough energy to get 2 attacks out of it, and then if you can generate even more, but this is a 4/4 haste for 3, so nice solid aggro beater. So even though he doesn't necessarily have a lot of punchy guys at the 1 and 2 mana spots, he does have punchy 3 drops. We got a 3/2 vanilla, which is fine. One thing about mostly having these 3 drops but lacking early creatures is his deck has a Sky Skiff and a Heart of Kirin. So these are actually the real muscle of the 2 mana slot, and Heart of Kirin in particular is really great. And so that's probably why we're playing a 3-power do nothing instead of some sort of 2-power do something. And then we've got this Wheelsmith. When it becomes tap, target creature can't block, so it's a better than average pilot. And they're solid 3-drop. And we've got, here's a 3/3 that makes an energy but can also pay the small amounts of energy to give haste, which is decently aggressive. And then we've got this little Scrapper Champion, 2/2 double strike. He can spend 2 energies to get a counter, but mostly just being a 2/2 double strike for 4 is pretty fine. when you're on the aggressive plan. We got a Felidar Guardian, probably one of the best ways to net a little bit of extra energy in this deck. Also a combo piece. A lot of people remember this guy got banned in Standard by playing Felidar Guard and Saheeli Rai, and we're doing that here. And he probably won 2 of his games in his 3 matches by cat comboing people. One of them where he was super on the back foot. The other one probably didn't matter that much. And we got a little bit more creatures here. We got this guy can kind of go wide or be a 4/3. Just kind of nice, versatile 4-drop. We got a guy with improvise. We got 2 guys with improvise. So we don't really have any 6-drops, but pretty basic Shivan Dragon variant. The 1 in a red to get +2 is pretty nice because we're at least a 2-color deck here. And then we've got Enraged Giant, which trample and haste. Like these are pretty good improvised payoffs. Then we got a handful of artifacts here to kind of cash out on that. Here's a cantripping artifact that can deal damage. When these things get used to improvise and you're playing a card that looks like a discountable 6 at like turn 4, this is really good at 4 mana. And you can still sack this later to get the card out of it. Or when you're tapping an equipment, something that just can be doing everything it wants to do when it's not tapped, is really on plan. And we got one more vehicle in here. When it attacks, can deal 1 damage to any target. Mostly a 6/6 with crew 3. It's nice to have some bigger guys sometimes. We got 2 pretty solid kind of catch-all removal. Well, it's attack creature, but it also can't crew vehicles. It's pretty relevant in this format. And then this one's an Oblivion Ring for artifacts or creatures. Pretty good. Nice catch-all removal. We got a shock, which little 1-mana kill spells like this are great and limited because you can be basically playing your game and not taking like half your turn off to like put a removal spell down. And so the efficiency on this, and there's just plenty of things for picking off a creature, and 2 toughness is a lot of the creatures. Like his deck as an example, tons of 3/2s, and that's pretty common. There'll be plenty of things where you're trading way up on mana on a little card like this. And then we've got Stram's Expertise. You can make 3 little tokens. Just kind of helps going wide. These are also artifact creature tokens, so this is another way to, like, you could potentially at 5 mana play this, tap your 3 artifacts plus 2 other artifacts, and improvise your Enraged Giant on the same turn. And so there's his pile that beat my pile as a B. It's a pretty good deck. And then we've got 7, 7, and 3. No non-basics to help him do what he's doing. He's only playing 1 blue card. Doesn't always hit the islands. I know that he tripped in some of his games on the color aspect of it, but not so much that he didn't lose a match. So congratulations to Bert on this one, and congratulations to Trey on this Ulamog casting pile. And that is the cube report for this month. And I don't know if I'm going to do a cube in July because I got a wedding to go to, among other things. But I will probably do a video later this month sorting my good cube, going over all the Lord of the Ring cards that I have that I want to put in there that I haven't put in there yet. And thanks for watching the video. Catch you in the next one.